I've got news for you. Don't expect Ben Bryant to be Desmond Ridder 2.0.
Are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline, as you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alex Frank with you, your host, each and every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast and on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel and follow us too to get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Here's the deal. Ben Bryant will never be Desmond Ridder 2.0. There are certain players and there are certain people who are one of one, whether that be in your program, whether that be in, whether it's in your life, right? There are certain people who are one of one. Desmond Ridder to the Cincinnati Bearcats is one of one. There will never be another Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder 2.0 is not going to be Ben Bryant. It's not going to be anyone. Don't expect Ben Bryant to be that. Do you know how hard it is to replace an icon, a legend? And I'm going to full disclosure this. I apologize for saying I'm going to hold Ben Bryant to a high standard, because I was on the Evan Prater train. That's why I said that. Excuse me. Sorry. So, there you go. Ben Bryant is not going to be Desmond Ridder 2.0. And if he's not, okay, you cannot let that get you down. You cannot let that, make you miserable watching Bearcats games. Because Ben Bryant is doing a lot better than any of us expected. I'm letting myself, and I said this after the Arkansas game, to just roll with him, both good and bad. Okay? If you're sitting there watching a Bearcats game, if you're sitting there during the second half of the game against Indiana, and you're saying to yourself, oh my gosh, see this guy, I told you, he's not Desmond Ridder 2.0. Why would you even think that in the first place? Because Ben Bryant backed up Desmond Ridder because you wanted him to start over Desmond Ridder at some point in his career? Is that what you're thinking? Because let me tell you something. He's not going to be that. Ben Bryant can't run like Desmond Ridder. Ben Bryant has a better arm than Desmond Ridder. They are two different players. When someone accomplishes what a player like Desmond Ridder does at a school like Cincinnati, no one is ever going to duplicate that. No one is going to be the first quarterback to ever take the Cincinnati Bearcats to the college football playoff. No quarterback is going to rewrite the record books the way Desmond Ridder did. No quarterback is going to win as many games as Desmond Ridder did. Third winningest quarterback in the history of college football. Ben Bryant will not be that. Okay? You have to get that out of your head that Ben Bryant can be the next Desmond Ridder. And if you are going to say, see, this is why I wanted Evan Prater to start. Well, I guarantee you'll be doing the same thing with Evan Prater, especially because he's a hometown recruit. So you're going to expect more out of him than you are with Ben Bryant. So why the heck are you even worried about that? We knew there was going to be growing pains with this team, with Ben Bryant. We saw that in the first half against Arkansas. We saw that in the second half against Indiana. We saw that in the Tulsa game on Saturday, where Ben Bryant was only 15 of 27 for 166 yards. He did throw for 2 touchdowns, but he also threw a bad interception. There are growing pains. That was his first conference game on the road. I don't care if the stadium was 70% full. I don't care if Tulsa's not very good. It's still a road game. And I don't think you understand what goes into a road game for a football team at the college level. The travel, the prep, you're away from home. You're sleeping you're not sleeping in your own bed. Now then again, I sleep better in hotels than I do in my own bed, so there's that. But then again, I don't play football. So it is incredibly difficult. The acoustics are not what you're used to. The saying home field advantage, it is absolutely paramount to college football. Ben Bryant just won his third road game of the season. I'm sorry, second road game of the season. And by the way, in the other road game, he performed pretty well. And if you're going to say to me, oh, Evan Prater could have done better, because Evan Prater is the next Desmond Ridder. And I've said that, but that's because I am a member of the media. I am supposed to say those things to generate conversation. And me saying all that I'm saying about Evan Prater and Ben Bryant has generated conversation. That's good, right? You comment on our YouTube videos, I take those comments and go, okay, there's some talking points here. This is how I interact with you. So you're welcome for me doing this today. To tell you that if you're sitting around moping and you're sitting around immiserating because Ben Bryant is not Desmond Ridder 2.0, well, I got news for you, and that's exactly what was going to happen. They are two very different players. Don't measure and compare Ben Bryant to Desmond Ridder. Ridder is a program icon, was here for 4 years. The way he built the program, the way he entered his career as a freshman in 2018 in the Rose Bowl, of all places, the greatest college football venue ever, 10-0, trailing. And if you say to me, oh, it's UCLA football, come on. The Bearcats were underdogs going into that game. Leads them to victory that night. And that was the first big win of the Luke Fickell era. Without Desmond Ridder, Luke Fickell may not be here. Because Desmond Ridder stayed, so too did Luke Fickell. The way Ridder built the program, the way he ran the program on the field, that's an icon. Okay? Ben Bryant may only be here 1 year. That's not going to make him Desmond Ridder 2.0. He could have the greatest season in Bearcats football history. And that is just a one-hit wonder. Okay? Stop sitting around and expecting Ben Bryant to be Desmond Ridder 2.0, because I got news for you. That's not going to happen. Ben Bryant is his own quarterback. He's done a very good job. He's got 13 touchdowns. He's got only 4 interceptions. Yes, he's thrown 1 in 4 of the 5 games. Not all of them are his fault. But again, this is what we do. We compare the guy who replaces the legend. You never want to be that, right? You never want to be the guy who replaces the legend. You didn't want to be, I said for years, and everybody said this, you didn't want to be the guy who replaced Tom Brady in New England. Imagine how much pressure there was going to be on that guy. First up, Cam Newton. Next up, Mac Jones. Now, Bailey Zappi. However you pronounce his name. Zappi. I don't know. What I do know is this. You're just going to drive yourself crazy and get more frustrated. If you keep saying to yourself, oh, he's not Desmond Ridder, stop comparing him. He won't be. As great as Desmond Ridder was, and as much as he accomplished at Cincinnati, we've moved on. The program has moved on. You should too. Coming up, let's look at other legends with the Bearcats, the city of Cincinnati, and elsewhere in sports. Talk about replacing a legend. This is an interesting topic. But first, a word from Nissan, our proud new sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network College channel. Our partners at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play from the Bearcats game at Tulsa last weekend, or we can go throughout the history of the University of Cincinnati. And this week's thrilling moment from the Bearcats is Tyler Scott's 61-yard touchdown reception near the end of the first quarter in the Bearcats' 31-21 win over Tulsa. The game was tied 7-7. The Bearcats, had gotten a pick six, but they allowed Tulsa to drive down the field and tie the game. And then Ben Bryant, just like he did 3 times in the game against Indiana, hit Tyler Scott streaking down the field for a 61-yard touchdown to give the Bearcats a 14-7 lead, and the Bearcats never let go of the lead the rest of the game. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today, available now at nissanusa.com. All right, so I am guilty of this. I have, in the past compared the guy who replaces the legend to the legend himself. And I did this when Tommy Thrall replaced Marty Brennaman, right? Marty Brennaman, if you grew up in Cincinnati like I did, you knew how much he meant to the city. I mean, he was with you every single day practically. Whether you were in your backyard grilling burgers and hot dogs, whether you were in your car driving back from I don't know where, whether you were, at Lake Michigan and you go in your car during, waiting for fireworks to start and you turn on 700 WLW. Marty was a part of your life every single day. He was for me. Okay. So, Tommy Thrall, I'm catching myself comparing him to Marty Brennaman. But it is human nature to do that. When someone is a legend and is a part of your life and is familiar to you for so long, like Marty Brennaman, like Desmond Ridder for Cincinnati, of course you're going to compare the next guy to him because you are familiar with him. Because you are used to it, right? And I'm not trying to make this episode of Locked On Bearcats Psychology 101, but this is what happens, okay? With Cincinnati, think of all the legends who have come and gone. Gary Clark, Jaron Cumberland, Sean Kilpatrick, Kenyon Martin, Bob Huggins. That's over on the basketball side. Think about the football side. Did we, and we're going to do this probably if Luke Fickell ever leaves. Whoever the next head coach after Luke Fickell is at the University of Cincinnati, we're probably going to compare him. Well, he doesn't recruit like Fickell. Well, he doesn't run a program like Fickell. He doesn't develop like Fickell, blah, 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 blah. We do it right now with Mike Tressel and Marcus Freeman, right? Because Marcus Freeman was so good and set the bar so high. You can't let that deter you, though, from what the new guy is doing. I like Mike Tressel. I give him a lot of credit. He's come in and hasn't completely wrecked the defense. He's come in and with a lot of talent still has the Bearcats defense playing at a very, very high level. Right? So with that being said, you just cannot sit around and compare the next guy to the guy before. We did that with Mick Cronin. And I wasn't around when Bob Huggins, well, I was for the last 7 years. But we always said, well, Mick Cronin will never be Bob Huggins. And, Bob Huggins won way more than he did and whatever. We never were satisfied with anything Mick Cronin did. Excuse me. We were never that satisfied. Because when someone sets a bar of greatness, we expect the next person to reach it. But that doesn't always happen. Mick Cronin had a very, very successful career at the University of Cincinnati. No one really will look at it that way because he never won at the level Bob Huggins did. They'll say, well, Mick only made one Sweet 16. Okay, Bob Huggins only made one Sweet 16 after 1996. Did you forget about that? After 1996. 4 years with Kenyon Martin. And you know what happened those years? They got to the second round and lost all 4 times. Now, granted, 2000, they didn't have Kenyon Martin. So who knows what would have happened there. But you think about, a player never being like Kenyon Martin. Or Jaron Cumberland was really good, but not quite the elite scorer that Sean Kilpatrick was. Can we stop doing that? Jaron Cumberland is one of my all-time favorite Bearcat players. Because he was tough. He didn't give 2 craps about much. He went out there and tried to do his job, which was lead his team to victory and put the team on his back, and more often than not, he did. including the senior season, that was marred by injuries and controversy that I always took Jaren's side of, and that's a topic for another day. Like, it is tough for programs, it's tough for fans, and it's tough for players when you have to replace a legend. We're not doing that with the cornerbacks replacing Sauce and Kobe, but yeah, we are doing it with Desmond Ridder, comparing Ben Bryant to Desmond Ridder. And it's only going to drive you more insane and zap you from enjoying this season. I'm very much enjoying this season. I think Ben Bryant's done a very, very good job. He's exceeded my expectations. He's a guy that can lead Cincinnati to a conference championship. Now, whether or not the Bearcats win a conference championship and go back to a New Year's Six Bowl remains to be seen. But right now, I like what I'm seeing. After a tough season opening loss to Arkansas, Ben Bryant has guided the Bearcats into the top 25 once again. And if we ever did a show of the top 25 reasons why the Bearcats are back in the top 25, Ben Bryant would probably be number one. You can yell and scream at me all you want right now, but that is the truth, and I will stand by it. Like, we look around this city of Cincinnati, and this is one of the problems with the city that I have had, and I've noticed it. And I noticed it during my time at 700. Excuse me. So, there's never going to be an offensive lineman for the Cincinnati Bengals like Anthony Munoz. There is never going to be another team like the Big Red Machine. Stop trying to wish there will be, because they won't be. Appreciate what those teams did, but also give the other teams a chance to live out their greatness and write their own story. Okay? We have a habit in this city, and maybe because for so long the present was very bleak. And it was. The Bearcats, have not been in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament in now 10 years. Okay, they've only been to the Sweet 16 one time since 2001. They haven't been to the Final Four since 1992. Hell, they haven't been to the Elite Eight since 1996. The Bearcats had never been to the College Football Playoff, BCS National Championship game, etc. And then, of course, the Reds have not won a postseason series since 1995. Bengals won 31 years without a playoff win. Man, it feels so nice to say that in the past tense. So, what we had was a habit of living in the past because the present was very bleak. But you can't do that. Like, I suffered through many, many losing seasons with the Bengals. But I never looked at the past. I didn't live it then like some people did. I'm not sure the demographics of our subscribers and listeners. But if you're of the age of, let's say, 50, maybe, and I'm not saying you are, but ask yourself this question. Are you finding yourself being too nostalgic? Are you living too much in the past of your teams because the present maybe is bleak to you? I don't know about you, man, but the Bengals have completely rejuvenated their fan base. I mean, I'm at the whiteout game with my family Thursday night. And let me tell you something. I remember going to Bengals games, and it was an afterthought to some people. They were there for the social atmosphere. When the stadium was maybe 75% full. There's a purpose now when you go to the games. You are there to cheer. You are there to be loud. You are there to make life a living misery for the opposing team. And the way the community came together last week, every fan wearing white, you've never seen that in an NFL game, let alone the Bengals, who had the most fractured relationship with their fan base for years. But now they have naming rights sold. They've got an indoor practice facility. They got sellouts at every game. They've got a very likable team that's good. I mean, that is an unbelievable transformation. The Bearcats, what they've done, the football program has done for the university is unbelievable. Wes Miller, the way he's recruiting, he's got 5 stars and 4 stars visiting and hopefully committing. Isaiah Collier is going to commit November 16th. Who knows when Jizzy James is going to commit? I mean, what Wes Miller's doing to resurrect the basketball program is cool. Like, I don't know about you, but like, if you ask yourself, and if you're being nostalgic and you're living in the past too much, I would stop. Because let me tell you something. To be a Bearcats fan right now, for me being the host of a daily Bearcats podcast with a great football team, top 25, an ascending quarterback, and a talented team, and a head coach who's revered around the community, It's fun, man. I mean, it is fun. Last year going to the playoff and then to be a Bengals fan coming off a Super Bowl appearance. Like, you can live in the past. You can be jealous of cities like Seattle. The Mariners just clinched their first playoff berth since 2001. And, the Braves are doing great in Atlanta, and you wish you were them, and you're jealous of the Cardinals and whatever else. Well, you know what? The city of Cincinnati is becoming a very, very, very good sports town. And you hear about players playing for Luke Fickell and the pride they have for the university. You hear it from the players on the Luke Fickell radio show. Stop living in the past when legends are being replaced. I listen to Ben Bryant on the Luke Fickell radio show, very professional, carries himself well. I listen to Wilson Huber. I listen to Ty Van Fossen. I listen to Trey Tucker. I listen to every player on that show talk about how much they love the university, how much they love playing for Luke Fickell and playing in Nippert Stadium and the program and the momentum that it has right now. So if you can't live in the present like these players are, then what the hell are you doing? Because I certainly am. To be a Bearcats fan right now, there's a saying at the university, next lives here. You don't say previously lives here or whatever the oxymoron is or the what is it? The opposite of next lives here. The past is whatever. We're looking forward, ladies and gentlemen. We're looking to the future. Luke Fickell's done that. Wes Miller's doing it. Zach Taylor and the Bengals are doing it. And that's why you have to get out of your head of, well, this guy's not who this guy was. You're never going to get there. I'll tell you this. We have a great, great sports university and community surrounding us right now. Let's embrace it. And you know what? Let's examine this coming up. Are we expecting too much out of this Bearcats team in particular? We'll get into it after a word from BetOnline. As you see, whoops, that's the wrong one. As you see on your screen, the BetOnline overlay, because betonline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so plenty more to get to here today, here on Locked On Bearcats. And I got to thinking when I was thinking about, Ben Bryant, the next Desmond Ridder 2.0, he's never going to be that. Okay, so just get that out of your head. But what he is an ascending quarterback who's a part of a team that's 4-1, this team that has a dominant defense. And I don't think we're expecting too much out of Cincinnati. We shouldn't be. They're right where they need to be, right? What do we say? Best case scenario, 3-1 through non-conference. They did that. And we said, don't get blown out at Arkansas. They lost by 7, and they very easily could have won that game. Don't compare this year's team to last year's team. Last year's team is 1-1. And I think with the Bengals, I'll throw this in there too. When the Bengals started 0-2, we were comparing them to last year. Well, we can't do that. D. Higgins came out and said, look, man, this year's a different team. This year's Bearcats team's a different team. It's a new team. It's a new season. And honestly, they're doing better than I expected. I thought they could be 4-1. I thought they were going to be, but I didn't think they were going to be this good, this dominant. Just walking out on the field every single game and saying to the opponent, "Hey, we got you. You're not competing with us today." I mean, they won 3 straight games by 14 points or more. That has to mean something to you. And their only loss this season was by 1 score at an SEC team. Do you care about that? Does that give you some hope of, hey, this team can be really good? This team weathered an 0-1 start for the first time in 12 years. This team is back in the top 25 before their bye week. And if you're expecting more from this team, what more do you want? Seriously, ask yourself that question. They are the only group of 5 team to be in the top 25, I think. So I'll have to confirm that. They are number 24 in the country. I'm sorry, they're independent, but they're in the top 25. They're the only group of 5 conference team in the top 25. That has to mean something to you. Be happy where this team is. How quickly they have come together. How quickly that they have just continued to dominate teams. They beat Miami by 21, and they're still what this Bearcats team has had a great tendency of doing every single year. When they face a tough challenge, like Miami, like Navy, Army, triple option, like UCF, they instantly identify that team's biggest strength, and boom, they make a game plan to beat it. Navy's triple option. We're going to go 4-4. We're going to bring an extra defensive back down into the box, or whatever the 4-4 is. Whatever the 4-4 is. We're going to have, a different formation to stop it. Whether it's UCF and we're going to rotate 22 different players in. Whether it's, whatever they need to do to beat that team, they will do. Keep your expectations tempered because it's still a team that doesn't have the alpha dogs and experience that last year's team has. Last year's team had the alpha dogs of Ridder, Gardner, and etc. This year, they don't have those alpha dogs yet, although Ivan Pace would tell you he's one, and I would agree with you. So that's why keep your expectations tempered. I think they can get there. If they beat UCF, which I think they will, I think Cincinnati is going to be 11-1 playing for a conference championship and likely a college football playoff berth. So be happy where this team is, how quickly it's come together, how they are still the favorites to win the conference. Because what there still is within this program is a winning culture. There's talent, there's top 25 status, and that is why you should not expect too much from this team. They are right where they need to be. I'll talk about that tomorrow with Russ Heltman in our weekly conversation that will include our film review of the Bearcats game over Tulsa. We'll look ahead to USF on Saturday, homecoming Saturday for the Bearcats, game preview for that show on Friday. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel. You can follow us too to get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Don't forget, you can also follow me on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's, NNATI. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, or email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. Locked On Bearcats is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And for your second listen, you can make it Locked On Big 12 with everyday host Josh Neighbors and the local experts of Locked On taking you across the conference in 30 minutes. Locked On Big 12. Make that your second listen. Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. Russ Heltman, my colleague at All Bearcats and Sports Illustrated, joins me tomorrow for our weekly conversation and film review of the Bearcats win over Tulsa. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. I'm Alex Frank for Locked On Bearcats. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you tomorrow with Russ Heltman here on Locked On Bearcats.